What's up, guys? Welcome back to Zwift Games, and for one more time, back to C category as well. I decided to do this race because it is the only opportunity for me to try the new mountain mesh route. It's available only for these NCs. As a part of Zwift Games, I believe it will be released to public as well in the future. But right now, that's the only opportunity. And I'm interested how about a month of racing among bees influences my ability to race in my true category. Should be fun. As always, if you are racing, good luck. If you like what I do, subscribe and enjoy. This is gonna hurt. That's right, this is gonna hurt. I was prepared for this because I've heard stories about the brutality of this race. It looks quite innocent on paper because it's only 6 kilometers long after all, and 350 vertical meters isn't that much either. But the way it usually goes with races like this is the pace is so unbelievably high right from the start. It was kind of certain that this is going to be a sufferfest. Even though I was interested about how I would do in C, I wasn't entering this race with the aim to win or to podium primarily. It would be nice, obviously, but my primary goal for this race was to treat it sort of like a time trial or FTP test. I really wanted to see how hard I can push myself on a steady incline, and considering the length of the race, I really hoped I would surpass my result from the Glasgow crit circuit. The first kilometer of this race is basically slight downhill, but that doesn't mean it was an easy ride down. In traditional C fashion, all of the guys shot out of the pen like arrows. So I arrived at the bottom of the climb already over 170 BPM. At the very beginning of the climb, you can see probably the biggest difference between C and B category. There isn't that much of a difference when riding on flat terrain, but when you are going uphill, in B category you can often see efforts over 5 watts per kilo. As you can see here, I'm at the front with 4.5 to 5 watts per kilo, and I'm steadily leaving the group behind me. So very quickly at the start of the climb, a small group of about 5 to 6 riders formed at the front, and the rest of the peloton settled into more reasonable pace. I can quite confidently say that all of the guys at the front are very close to a B promotion, because the effort level here was more close to what I was used to from B racing. I really wanted this to be my best effort I've ever done, so I treated this race sort of differently than the others. I've eaten quite well. I had a warm-up. I had plenty of hydration before. So from this standpoint, I was probably coming into the race as prepared as I could. Obviously, entering it, I was quite nervous because A, my last 2 races weren't that good, and B, this wasn't a B race where it was fine if I was in the middle of the field. Considering that I aimed to be promoted to B very soon, I expected myself to dominate this race. Probably not win it, but certainly end in the front. Anything else would be considered unsuccess from my point of view. So in that way, I probably put a lot more pressure on myself than I should have. But as I said, this was not place for excuses. I really wanted to go all out. This was the shortest race I've ever done on Zwift, but I can almost certainly say that it was also the hardest. The only other time I felt like this at the end of the race was when I was racing 5K races in running. For those of you who don't know, 5K races are probably the most intense races in running because they are already quite long, but in order to pace it well, you need to put the pedal down right from the start. So you enter the suffer zone very, very soon, and then you bathe in it for the remainder of the race. And I noticed it was the same with this one. If you can enter C or D races and you haven't raced this so far, give it a go. It's a very interesting experience. I won't say it is a pleasant experience because I don't want to lie, but you will definitely be pushed through your limits on this one. As I stated at the beginning, I wanted to treat this race basically as an FTP test, so I didn't really care for drafting or to stay with a group. I just wanted to maintain about 270 to 280 watts for the whole duration of the race, and by the end, if I was able to increase the pace and sprint to the finish line. As usual, in reality, it wasn't as easy. I've heard this saying that if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, and that was absolutely the case in this race. For the most part of the race, I was actually able to go fairly hard, and you can really see it on the power chart, but I would be lying if I said that the voices in my head telling me to stop weren't very, very loud. At this point, we are basically in the third of the race, at least in terms of time elapsed. I expected to finish just under 20 minutes. And at this point, I'm still feeling quite strong. You can see that although right at this point, my power declined slightly, I was able to go back pretty soon, and when there was actually decrease in the power, it was when the road became more flat and when the incline increased again, my power went back up. So far, however, the development of this race gave me quite a bit of confidence that my fitness actually increased nicely when racing with beasts, because as you can see, there is about 5 of us in the front, and the rest of the field already has more than a 10-second deficit. So I guess if you are looking for an easy way to improve, race often and race in a higher category. The competition will push you to your limits way more than if you were racing where you really belong. We are nearing the 8-minute mark here, and at this point I'm already pushing 180 BPM heart rate, which kind of confirms what I heard about this race. The steep incline at the start of the climb will basically tire your legs and lungs very, very quickly. And for the remainder of the climb, you just basically stew in your misery. And it truly is quite unpleasant. By the way, have you noticed that there aren't that many races on the other side of the Epic KOM? During my time on Zwift, I've raced this side probably like 4 times already, but I've never raced the main side. Or maybe I'm just entering the wrong races. Despite how already hard it was at this point, I felt kind of great today. It was completely different feeling from my 2 last races, the Alpe d'Huez Zwift and the Greater London Flat. In both these races, I felt exhausted and basically unable to get into the rhythm and get into the mental state that is necessary to really dig deep. Today, that part was completely different. I was hurting, but I was able to push through it. This is the halfway point of the race, both in terms of time elapsed and basically the distance. And at this point, I was quite confident that this could be my best race ever. I was pushing the power that I needed to push, and the visualization of the successful race was really pushing me forward. As you can see, there is still about 6 of us at the front of the race, and then there is a pretty significant gap already. After the race, I checked these other guys that were in the front with me, and basically all of them got promoted to be from this race. So if I wanted to be really fair, the actual C race was going on 14 seconds behind us at this point. In this race, there are like 2 or 3 descents like this, where you seemingly can recover a little bit, but it's very short. However, on this one, I really was basically free coasting. I was just pedaling enough to maintain some speed, but I really needed to take those few seconds off. Two kilometers to go in a standard race. That's basically the home stretch. It's crazy to think that in this race, it's basically still half of the climb, almost half of the climb. But that is not the way you should think about it when you are doing actually this climb. At this point in the race, it's basically just about doing one pedaling stroke at a time until you are at the finish line. This was probably my last sea race for a long time. The next week I plan to do the second stage of the virtual Etape Tour de France, both the prologue and the main stage event. And after that I will probably return to B racing because I find it more fun, more challenging. And hopefully, if things go according to plan, I won't be able to race in C, hopefully, quite soon anyway. But today I didn't really know what race I should do. And since doing the climb stage in C category, it's basically the only way you can now ride this route, it seemed like a perfect game plan for this weekend. This is where a little crisis caught me. You can see that my power output is decreasing to about 240 watts. But thankfully I was able to get back into the rhythm quite soon. Because if I didn't, the race would be over and it would be just another race that I would consider a failure. So I'm really glad I was able to surpass this moment of weakness. It is fair to say, though, that the other riders in the front group, if you can really consider it a group, were actually better than me. I was losing ranks throughout the race. I started at the 3rd spot, I believe, and right here I'm on the 5th. And even the main peloton was getting closer, as you can see. There's like a 14 seconds gap, and it used to be 17 or 18. So this was really my weakest spot in the race, and it was immediately reflected on the interim results. But this was a last switchback of the race, and I always feel that after the last switchback, it always gets somewhat easier. Not physically, definitely not physically, but mentally you have that knowledge that it's basically home stretch. And at least for me, that allows me to really push harder, knowing that the pain will be already soon over. But if you look at my webcam footage, you can clearly see this wasn't a pleasant afternoon ride for me. One kilometer till the end, and I'm at 184 BPM, which is very often the value I'm finishing the races after the sprint. So that's another sign I was really working hard during this race. And what you can see right now is something I would like to work on in the future. What happens very often to me is that by the end of the race, other riders are passing me. And that isn't really great thing from the mental side, because it's a clear statement that other riders are way fresher than I am. And that has been my bad habit lately, to really push the power very hard from the start and then blow up at the end. I didn't blow up this time, but obviously my performance isn't nearly as strong as it was at the beginning of the climb. Right here, I already knew that this was going to be the last uphill push of the race, because the last about 400 meters is on the flat, or almost flat if we want to be completely correct. So I decided to give it one more push that you can see right now. And as you can see here, there is another guy passing me, and at this point there is no chance in hell I'm letting another rider in front of me. Maybe for a little bit here, but I knew I needed to beat this one, even if just for my peace of mind. Last uphill segment done, and right now it is time for me to show what I'm the best at, which is the finishing sprint. And as you can see, I finished the race with 194 BPM, which coincidentally is my maximum heart rate. At this point, I would like to do a little bit of a race debrief. This was clearly my best performance so far. I exceeded my performance from Glasgow Crit Circuit, and as you can see on the screenshot, I reached my personal best at 12, 15, and 17.5 minutes, which means I should get my FTP increase and as a result get my promotion to B, because remember, I only needed to increase my FTP by 1 watt. So did my FTP actually increase? Well, yeah, sort of. At least it did on Intervals ICU and on Xert, which are both platforms that have a power duration model and they model your FTP. But on Zwift, my FTP actually decreased by 6 watts from this activity. I'm not sure how my FTP can decrease if I record my personal best in longer durations. I've talked to the support and didn't get much help. And I would be lying if I said I didn't feel a little bit robbed of my promotion right now. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter. I'm gonna race again and keep fighting, and I will ultimately get there. But I firmly believe I should have gone to B after this race. This was my best race, hands down. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this. As always, if you like my content, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next race. Ciao.